Good evening. You don't need to sit up for this. You don't need to remember any of it. Tonight is not a lesson. It is a long, slow walk through cities that stopped existing a very long time ago. 4,000 years ago, the world was already old. There were already ruins. There were already people who stood in front of fallen walls and wondered who had built them. Tonight we will visit a few of those places. Cities of mud, brick and copper, of grain ships and clay tablets. Cities that were loud once and are quiet now. Nothing sudden will happen in this video. My voice will stay low. The pictures will move slowly. If you fall asleep in the middle of a sentence, that is the correct way to watch. Let's begin somewhere warm. A river valley 5,000 years ago, just after sunset. Before London, before Rome, before Athens, there was Uruk. It sat on the flat green plain of southern Mesopotamia, in the land we now call Iraq, beside a slow brown branch of the Euphrates River. If you stood on its walls at dusk, you would have seen date palms in every direction and canals catching the last light like strips of copper. Uruk was, as far as we know, the first true city on Earth. Not the first village. Villages were already ancient. But Uruk was something new, a place with tens of thousands of people, most of whom did not grow their own food. Bakers, weavers, brickmakers, priests, brewers, people who spent their whole lives inside a web of other people. The city rose slowly over centuries, the way sediment settles in still water. Houses were built of mud brick, and when a house grew old, it was flattened and a new one was built on top. Layer upon layer, generation upon generation, until the city stood on a low hill made entirely of its own past. At the center were the temples, one for Anu, god of the sky, one for Inanna, goddess of love and war. The temple platforms were whitewashed, and in the morning sun they must have been almost too bright to look at. Farmers walking in from the fields could see them from an hour away. And here, in these temple storerooms, something small and world-changing happened. The priests needed to keep track of things: jars of barley, heads of cattle, bales of wool. So they pressed marks into wet clay with a cut reed, a symbol for barley, a symbol for the number 10. They were not trying to invent literature, they were doing accounting. But those pressed marks slowly became writing, the first writing on Earth. Almost everything we know about the ancient world descends, one way or another, from a tired clerk in Uruk counting sheep. Which is a comforting thought in a way. You are falling asleep to the descendants of lists. Evenings in Uruk would have sounded like this: goats being herded home through narrow lanes, the knock of a loom from a doorway, beer being poured. The Sumerians drank beer through long reed straws, sitting together around a shared jar. Somewhere, a priest chanting on a high platform, and beyond the walls, frogs in 10,000 irrigation ditches. Uruk lasted longer than almost any city we know. People lived there, in one form or another, for about 5,000 years. It outlived its own language. It outlived its gods. It was already a place of pilgrimage and nostalgia when Rome was young. And then, quietly, it ended. The rivers moved. The Euphrates, which had fed the canals, shifted its bed over the centuries, wandering west the way rivers do. The fields dried. The people followed the water, as people always do. No battle destroyed Uruk. It was simply, gently left. Today, the site is called Warka. It is desert now. The mound of the city rises out of the flat land, brown on brown, and the wind moves over the broken stumps of the temple platforms. Sometimes archaeologists come and dig and find another few thousand clay tablets, receipts mostly, rations of bread and beer for workers whose names are still legible. 5,000 years, and the sand kept every list. Far to the east of Mesopotamia, along another slow river, there was a different kind of city. Mohenjo-daro stood beside the Indus in what is now Pakistan, about 4,500 years ago. Its name is modern. It means mound of the dead men, because we do not know what its own people called it. We cannot read their writing. A few hundred short inscriptions survive on small stone seals, and they keep their silence. So Mohenjo-daro is a city we can walk through, but not listen to. And it is a strange, calm place to walk through. The streets are straight. They cross at right angles, like a modern grid. The houses are built of baked brick. Millions of bricks, all made to the same proportions, as if the whole city had agreed on a single quiet standard. Almost every house had a bathing room with a drain. The drains ran under the streets, covered with brick, inspected through manholes. It was, by a wide margin, the best plumbing the world would see for thousands of years. But here is the strange part. Archaeologists have found no palace, no grand tombs, no statues of kings 20 times life-size, no monuments boasting of conquest. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, rulers wrote their names on everything. Here, almost nothing. The grandest building in Mohenjo-daro is not a throne room, it is a bath, a great sunken pool of tight-fitted brick, sealed with tar, with steps leading down into the water from either end. Perhaps it was for ritual. Perhaps purity mattered here more than power. We are guessing, the city does not say. Some scholars believe it was governed by councils, or by merchant families, or by priests without faces. Whoever they were, they kept the drains clean for 700 years, which is more than most empires can claim. Evenings here would have smelled of river mud and cooking oil. Cotton cloth. This valley is where cotton was first woven, drying on flat rooftops. Carts with solid wooden wheels creaking home. Children's games, Archaeologists find small clay dice and animal figurines everywhere. And then, around 37 or 38 centuries ago, the city began to empty. Not in a single night. There is no ash layer, no field of arrowheads. The Indus civilization faded over a century or two. The rivers shifted, the monsoon weakened, the trade routes withered. The Great Bath was patched, then patched again, then left. Squatters lived for a while in the upper ruins. Then the mound stood alone, the bricks stayed. The silence, which had always been part of the city, simply became all of it. There is an island in the Aegean Sea shaped like a crescent moon, with white towns balanced on dark cliffs. Today it is called Santorini. The cliffs are the wall of a volcano. 3,500 years ago, the island was round and green, and in its south there was a town called, by us, not by them, Akrotiri. It was a Bronze Age port, tied by trade to Minoan Crete. Ships came in with copper and went out with wine, saffron, and painted pottery. The town had 2- and 3-story houses, indoor toilets connected to street drains, and walls covered in frescoes. The frescoes are the reason people fall in love with Akrotiri. Blue monkeys climbing red rocks, 2 boys boxing, wearing 1 glove each, a fleet of ships crossing a bay full of dolphins, watched from the rooftops by a whole painted town, swallows over lilies in spring. These were not tombs or temples, these were living rooms. And then, at some point in the 16th or 17th century before our era, the earth began to shake. The people of Akrotiri clearly had warning. Earthquakes came first, and they left. What tells the story is what is missing. In Pompeii, archaeologists found the shapes of people. In Akrotiri, so far, they have found no one. The town was evacuated. Beds were moved to doorways, as if for repairs, and then abandoned. Someone took the gold. Someone left the frescoes. Then the volcano erupted, one of the largest eruptions in human history. The center of the island fell into the sea. Ash fell on Akrotiri, meters and meters of it, soft and total, sealing the houses, the stairs, the painted swallows in a single grey blanket. The ash that buried the town also preserved it. Wooden furniture rotted away but left perfect hollows. Archaeologists pour plaster in and lift out the ghost of a Bronze Age chair. Where did the people go? Ships had time to leave. Perhaps they reached Crete and told the story, and the story slowly became legend. Some scholars believe the drowned island lived on in memory, and that Plato, 1,000 years later, dressed it in philosophy and called it Atlantis. Perhaps. It is the kind of question that has no bottom, like the sea over the caldera. The swallows in the fresco are still flying. They have been in the air for 3,500 years. High on the Anatolian plateau in modern Turkey, the winters are hard. Snow settles on pine forests and granite ridges. It is a strange place for the capital of an empire. And yet, for 400 years, one stood here. Hattusa was the capital of the Hittites, a people who, for a while, matched Egypt itself. Pharaoh Ramesses II fought them at Kadesh in one of the largest chariot battles ever recorded. And after the fighting bogged down, the two empires did something quietly remarkable. They wrote a peace treaty, the oldest surviving peace treaty in the world. A copy hangs today in the United Nations. Hattusa itself climbed a mountainside, 6 kilometers of walls, gates guarded by carved lions and sphinxes, temples in the lower town, palaces on the high crag. In its archives, 30,000 clay tablets slept, treaties, prayers, laws, and letters between kings that open, like all diplomatic mail, with elaborate compliments and get slowly to the point. One tablet preserves a king's complaint that a rival sent him iron of poor quality. Another preserves rituals against plague. Another, instructions for the royal bodyguard, step by step, like a procedure manual. Empires are held together with paperwork and always have been. Around 3,200 years ago, the entire Eastern Mediterranean entered a long emergency. Harvests failed. Trade routes broke. Raiders that Egyptian scribes called the Sea Peoples moved along the coasts. It was the Bronze Age collapse, a slow-motion fall of almost every great power at once. Hattusa did not fall in glory. The evidence suggests the city was wound down, the archives sealed, the treasures removed, the capital formally abandoned by its own administration before the final fires came. Someone chose which tablets to take. Someone locked doors, knowing. The lions are still there, at the gate. Their faces are worn soft by 3,000 winters. They guard an empty hill, and they do not seem troubled by it. Why do cities die? Almost never for one reason. The rivers move, like at Uruk. The rains fail, like on the Indus. The mountain explodes, like at Akrotiri. The whole connected world stumbles at once, like at Hattusa. Usually it is several of these, slowly, together. But here is the gentler truth inside all of these stories. The people, mostly, walked away. Collapse in a history book looks like an edge, a cliff. Lived from inside, it was usually a decision made by families, one by one, over years. The harvest is thinner again. Cousins have moved to the coast. The temple has not been repaired. One spring, you load the cart. The city does not die like a person. It dies like a fire going out, ember by ember, warm for a surprisingly long time. And the ruins were never really empty. Shepherds sheltered in them. Poets visited them. A Babylonian king, 25 centuries ago, dug into ruins already ancient to him, found a foundation stone from 1,000 years earlier and displayed it. One of the first museum labels in history. People have always stood in front of fallen walls, feeling exactly what you feel. The Bronze Age world ended, but the barley did not care. The rivers kept moving. The same stars came out over the mounds. Writing survived in a few stubborn places, and within a few centuries, new cities were rising on top of the old ones, which is why archaeologists must dig down to find the past. The ground itself is a kind of sleep, layer upon layer. We have walked a long way tonight, a river city made of lists, a brick city without kings, a painted town under the ash, and a stone capital in the snow. All of them were once somebody's ordinary evening, someone's lamp, someone's unremarkable Tuesday 5,000 years ago. Whatever is unfinished in your day, it will keep until morning. The cities can teach us that much. Very few things cannot wait. The pictures will keep drifting for a while. There is nothing more you need to listen to. Good night.